Hey there, it's Simon Hurley from Inklipse and welcome to another video. Now today I'm super excited to do one of my favorite things. It's time for another installment of a card making life hacks video. These are always so exciting and I'm always happy to share lots of different tips with all of you guys. So in today's video I'm doing it a little bit different. I'm going to be sharing two different cards, and throughout the whole thing I'll be sharing lots of different life hacks and tips for how to create those cards and make everything a little bit easier as you're going along. So they kind of, go along with any different project you're making, but I will have two finished cards in the end. So without further ado, let's get right on into the video tutorial. Alright, so first here I'm using this Thanks Sugar Script die from Birch Press, and I've cut this little word out 5 times using black cardstock, and I'm going to be adhering these together to create a more substantial die cut. Now I do this a lot to kind of make it hold its weight on the card and make the die cut stand out a lot if you're just going to use a word die on the card. Now I do this with liquid adhesive as well to make sure that it gives me a little bit of wiggle room so I can move it around, make sure everything's nice and lined up before it all is stuck together. Now this isn't the life hack right now, but I did want to share this part that I do use liquid glue for this because it really helps me line everything up, and I kind of pinch the edges together to make sure everything is perfect before it all dries. Now when I do this with die cuts, I like to kind of give things a shiny finish to again make it stand out on the card and give that wow factor. And you can either do this with thin layers over and over of embossing powder or glossy accents. But recently I've been using a product that you have to do once and it dries right away and gives that really awesome thick coat of shine. So I'm adding that die cut right onto a piece of tape here that's going to hold it in place and kind of act as a handle for me. And then I'm going to take my clear sticky ink and I'll pounce this over top of the Thanks die cut quite a bit. I want to make sure there's lots of clear sticky ink on there to make sure everything is going to stay put. So I'm using this ultra thick embossing powder from Ranger. Now this comes in a clear finish and I have been loving it recently for projects like this where you want a really nice thick application of that embossing powder. Now I'm going to hold it close to the camera here and you can really see those thick granules. Rather than being the fine little embossing powder, these thick pieces will create a super thick layer of that gloss and will dry pretty quickly to give you a nice finished die cut right away. So you don't have to wait for that glossy accents to dry. You get this really nice thick coat in one pass and you don't have to wait for anything to dry and be impatient. Sometimes I end up ruining that too. So this is a really great way to get that nice shine. So you just heat it up really quick. Once it turns nice and shiny, you just want to let it dry for a couple of seconds to cool off, and then you can pull it off and you get that really awesome shine like this, and I just love that. Now I do know that a lot of companies make sentiment strips or banner dies to make things really nice and easy for you to stamp in and make sure everything is straight. But I'm going to show you a trick that I used ever since I started stamping that's been working for me ever since. So I'm going to stamp down a sentiment here, and you can see it's a little bit crooked on that piece of white cardstock there. So what I'm going to do is I'll bring in my Holtz guillotine trimmer, and this has lots of different grid lines on it, but we're going to be using that plastic guide piece that's for your hand right at the end there, and that's going to help us line things up here. So I'll bring this right to the edge, and I'm going to line it up with right at the edge of that plastic guide there. So I'm not going to let any black of the sentiment overhang over that. I'm going to make sure that it's really nice and pressed against that, all lined up with there, and then I'll chop that down. That's going to give me a really nice straight edge with the sentiment, and you could have stamped that anywhere in your cardstock and you're going to get a really nice straight edge. So then I'll do it with the other side as well, flipping it over, and you could do this with all 4 sides of the sentiment strip if you want to create that really nice, clean, boxed off look, and you don't have to run it through a die cutting machine and take time to do that. It's really easy to do with your trimmers, and you can have a nice finished product in just a matter of seconds. So once I have done that, here is that finished piece, and I also wanted to share that once you're done with this, you do end up with like 2 ends that are kind of the same width, and what I like to do with these is create my own DIY banner. I'll share more about this later, but I'm going to just chop off in the center. I'm going to trim a little bit out, and then trim from both sides meeting right into the center, and that's going to create a fishtail banner edge, and that's going to be really awesome to create a fun little banner on your card later. So I also wanted to share you can do this with any kind of trimmer. Like I said, I've been doing it since I started, and I had this trimmer when I first started out, and a lot of people still have these. So this one happens to have a little wire guide, but it also has 2 plastic sides. So I'm going to line up my sentiment right against that plastic piece again there, really making sure it's nice and straight along there, and then I'll go in and cut down here. Now I'm going to move it over to the other side. Instead of flipping it, all you have to do is just move it further in the trimmer. The other side has a nice plastic piece that's the same size. I'm going to line it up with that and trim right down as well. So you can see with both of these trimmers, you get a really nice straight edge. You can create your own banners that are really simple to do, and you can do this in most trimmers. So just look at your trimmer, see if it has a little guide somewhere you can follow, and then you can use that to cut it out. Now I do prefer guillotine trimmers now. I find they give me a cleaner edge, but anything is gonna work for this. Now with this next life hack, I'm going to use these Tim Holtz funky floral dies. I love these, and lots of other dies that build in our industry can be quite difficult if you want to run it through with different colors of cardstock. So here I wanted to share, you just run things through with white cardstock and then go in with markers and color it in. They don't have to be Copic markers, you can really do it with any kind of water-based markers or alcohol markers. And what this is going to allow you to do is I did this all in one pass, and I'm going to go in and color different pieces with different colors. So it's super simple, and you can even add some depth to your pieces by doing this as well. So by going in here, I can add some shading since I'm using markers and kind of create more depth and detail to my die cuts. Now you can also make it match your project. So instead of using different colors of cardstock, you might not have one that matches perfectly. You can go in with your markers, find two colors that match perfectly, do a little bit of coloring, save some time like that, save some passes through your die cutting machine, and get all these pieces colored just on white cardstock. It's a really easy way to do things. And also if you have a die that has, different pieces like this tulip where I wanted to color some of the leaves green and then the tulip's actually red, it's really easy to do that rather than cutting it out of different colors of cardstock and adhering it together like that. So these dies are also super fun. These are from Tim Holtz, and you can cut all these out and they layer really nicely to create these really fun and funky florals, just like they're called. So after I'm done with that, this isn't really a life hack portion, but this is just me finishing off the card. I'm using this Tim Holtz background stamp that I just love. I kind of love the look of that floral background. And I'm going to ink that up in some pumice stone distress oxide. I'll spray it down a little bit, and then I'm going to stamp it down onto a piece of cardstock here. And now this is going to create a really nice kind of soft gray background that's going to go really well with the flowers that we just created. So I'll pull that off there. You can see that really awesome and beautiful design. And then I've added all my flowers onto this, as well as that thanks, and then I'm going to show how to put that banner together here. So I've added some adhesive underneath that. I put the piece down that says from all of us, and then just kind of for placement now, but I'm going to adhere these banner edges down now that I know exactly where that's going to be. And then I'll take the from all of us on a piece of foam tape and add it right in the center, kind of upward a little bit. So that creates that really awesome banner, and again, it takes really little to no time to create that banner, and you get a really awesome look from it with no dies needed, which is really great. So like I said, I've added that all together. I love the look of that, combining everything that we learned today with this first card, and then I just added it onto the card base, and I think that finishes it off nicely with that really awesome white frame. So I love that way that shines, and all the flowers that we colored in as well. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next card with a bunch more life hacks for shaker card making, since this is something that I struggled with, and I found lots of tips that really helped me create a really awesome shaker card. So I'm going to score this piece of craft cardstock just like I would any other top folding card, just right at 5.5, and then I'll crease it down there so we can move on to our next life hack. So for this one, it's pretty simple, but I really do love the outcome, and it can be really awesome to use a bunch of different dies like this. So I have that fold at the top there. Like I said, it's just a regular card. And then I'm going to take a die. This one happens to be a heart from Tonic, and this is a stackable die set, which is really nice. I'm going to overhang it at the top. So you can see that top metal piece of the die cut heart is hanging over top of that folded edge. What that's going to do is it's going to create the fold at the top of the card, so once it's cut out, you have this really nice folding heart card, which I just love. I think it's awesome to do with hearts, but really the possibilities are endless. You can bring in really your whole die collection for this and try a bunch of different things to create some really awesome shaped cards. These are also really great for shakers as well. Now the really nice part about doing this with a shaker card is there are lots of dies that are created for a shaker, but if you want to do a stackable die set, this one happens to be the one that I just used, I'm going to take the die that I used and one that's 2 sizes smaller, and I'm going to line these up and tape them down so it becomes almost like one die. I'm going to run this right through my die cutting machine with a piece of white cardstock. So that creates a really nice frame for a shaker card. Like I said, these stackable die sets work really awesome for shakers and making little frames and borders. So now for shaker cards, I like to use 3M foam tape. Now you want it to be twice as thick as it usually is so that it holds lots of sequins and things to shake around in there. So I find it to be easiest to just fold it right back onto itself, and that way you get a double thickness of foam tape rather than having to stack it on top later, and that can be a little bit messy and kind of a sticky mess. So folding it like this is really easy. And then I also like to go in and cut this right in half. Now this is easy and nice because then you can bend it around corners. It's a lot easier to maneuver if it's a little bit thinner. And it also helps to save some of your foam tape. So if you don't want to use a ton of really thick pieces of foam tape on your shaker card, since it's just going to be behind your piece, you can definitely cut it in half and save a little bit of your adhesive. So I'm using this acetate sheet. This one happens to be from Studio Katya, but I've cut it out in that heart shape and I'm going to adhere it right to the back of that heart that I cut there. So once I've adhered it down, I'm going to use some powder bag. This is an anti-static powder bag, so what it's going to do is get rid of any static that's on that acetate so that none of my sequins really stick there and it won't really hold any of them in place, which is really nice. Now I wiped that off with a cloth to get rid of any excess, and then I'm going to go in with my foam tape here. Now, like I said, cutting it into those smaller strips is really nice. You can see me kind of maneuvering it around the edge here, and that's like impossible to do with a full strip of foam tape. So cutting it down is really nice and easy to maneuver it around the corners and really work it into the shape you want it to. So here I'm finishing off with a whole border right around the edge of that shaker card, and you just want to really cleanly do this. You don't want any edges really jagged or anything, and that way it's going to work really nice. So with that backer tape still on the foam tape, it's protecting the adhesive, I'm going to go around with the anti-static powder bag one more time, and I'm going to cover the edges of the foam tape. That'll make sure none of my sequins will get stuck in the edges. I've had that happen way too many times. So that's a really great tip to kind of keep any of that from happening and any of your things from sticking on the edges. So now, to finish it off, I'm throwing in my sequins. These happen to be from Studio Katya. I just love those fun and colorful mixes, and I find they're really great for shaker cards. And then I'll add a little bit of clear iridescent in as well. So now I'm taking my shaped card that we created. I'm going to add that right on top of that white piece since it lines up exactly perfect. And then I'm going to make sure it's really nice and lined up, and then give it lots of pressure. You want to make sure to apply tons of pressure to that foam tape. I've had it before where I flipped the card and it wasn't fully adhered, so you want to make sure it's nicely adhered. And then here you have that great shaker card, and it works super awesome. Nothing really gets stuck on the edges. It's really great since we did that extra step with the anti-static powder bag. It really works nicely. So then all I did was add a little banner like we created earlier, that DIY banner, and then a sending love and hug sentiment embossed. But I hope these shaker card tips helped you. I used to struggle with making shaker cards, but some of these tips really helped me as well. Alright, so I hope you guys really enjoyed that video. Hopefully you now have some more life hacks and tips up your sleeve for next time you decide to craft and want to save a little bit of time in your craft room. So be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and also I would love if you guys can subscribe down below so you'll never miss another video like this one from me. I would love to hear you down below in the comments as well. I always love chatting with you guys. I want to hear which one was your favorite card and which life hack was your favorite as well, and I'll be sure to respond to some of your comments. And I hope to see you guys very soon for another card making and crafting tutorial. Have a great day. Bye!